She came running down the slope, waving her arms like she owned the whole lake. "You're trespassing on HOA property," she screeched, pointing at the water where my kids were tossing pebbles. I almost laughed. Little did she know, the very water she claimed as theirs was listed on the title deed, under my name. I've lived in the same quiet town for most of my life. When I finally bought my own place, I wanted something a little different, peaceful, private, and surrounded by nature. After months of searching, I found it, a modest home sitting on a few acres of land, tucked behind a row of pines. What made it special wasn't just the house, though. Out back stretched a small pond that shimmered like glass in the mornings, with geese landing in pairs and dragonflies darting across the surface. It wasn't some man-made pool or HOA amenity, it was natural, fed by an underground spring, and came with the property. The title deed even outlined the pond's exact boundary. That water was as much mine as the front porch. It was one of the main reasons I signed the papers without hesitation. My neighborhood itself was a strange mix. On one side, you had families like mine, folks who valued privacy, tended their own gardens, and didn't care much for rules beyond common sense. On the other side loomed the HOA community, shiny new homes with uniform fences, strict landscaping codes, and a board of self-appointed leaders who treated the entire subdivision like their personal kingdom. At first, I thought I could ignore them. After all, my land wasn't inside their HOA boundaries. I was independent, no dues, no meetings, no rulebooks. But the trouble started because my pond sat right at the edge of where their neatly drawn map ended. The HOA had long enjoyed telling newcomers that the water was their community pond, a feature for their neighborhood brochures. People fished there, held picnics by the shore, even boasted about how their dues helped maintain it. So when I moved in and my kids started skipping rocks across the water, it wasn't long before someone took notice and stormed over to set us straight. The first clash came on a Saturday morning. My son was fishing off the small wooden dock when a woman in yoga pants and oversized sunglasses marched over like she owned the place. She had the unmistakable aura of a self-declared HOA queen, the type who believed her word carried more weight than the law. "Excuse me," she snapped, hands on hips. "That water is for HOA members only. You can't just trespass here." I calmly explained that the pond was on my property. I even pointed out the old fence posts marking the line. She scoffed like I'd just told her the sky was purple. "I've lived here 15 years, she declared. "Everyone knows this is HOA water. Our dues maintain it." Then she leaned in, lowering her sunglasses just enough to give me a cold, challenging stare. "If you don't stop using it, we'll fine you." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but her tone left no doubt, she was serious. And sure enough, within a week, I found an official-looking envelope taped to my mailbox. An HOA violation notice, accusing me of trespassing on community property and demanding I cease unauthorized use of HOA facilities. I didn't live in their neighborhood. I had never signed their contracts. Yet somehow, they thought they had authority over my backyard pond. The pettiness didn't stop there. A few days later, I caught two HOA board members strolling down to the water with clipboards, snapping photos of my kids as they played. My wife stormed outside and demanded they leave, but they smugly replied they were documenting ongoing violations. Soon after, strangers from the HOA began showing up, families with coolers, teenagers tossing footballs into the water, even a couple who tried to drag a paddleboat into the pond. When I told them to leave, they waved me off. "This is our HOA pond," one man said, "we pay for this." I couldn't believe it. The HOA had spread the lie so far that their entire community now treated my pond as if it were public property. And the more I protested, the more aggressive they became. Threats of fines. Warnings of legal action. Whispers about removing my dock because it was an unauthorized structure. The line between annoyance and outright harassment had been crossed. And each envelope, each confrontation, each smug denial of reality pushed me closer to a decision I knew was coming. I wasn't going to roll over. The moment that broke me came one humid afternoon when I returned from work to find two HOA trucks parked on the edge of my property. A crew of men, wearing safety vests with the HOA's logo, were standing near my dock with chainsaws and a set of rolled-up blueprints. I walked straight over. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" One of them, clearly the foreman, barely looked up. "We've been authorized by the HOA to remove unauthorized structures and restore this pond for community use. This dock has to come down." It took me a second to process his words. They were about to tear down my dock. My dock. On my land. I stood there, heart pounding, as Karen herself strutted up in her wide-brimmed sun hat, holding a clipboard like some sort of sheriff. "This is community property," she repeated smugly. "You're lucky we don't bill you for damages you've caused." That was it. That was the breaking point. Watching strangers prepare to destroy what my father and I had built, with Karen smirking as if she owned me, it flipped a switch inside me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply said, "You're making a mistake you'll regret." That night, I pulled out the worn folder where I kept every deed, survey, and record tied to this land. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. I didn't want a fist fight, I wanted paperwork to do the punching. That night I spread the deed and surveys across the kitchen table and started building a case the HOA couldn't sneer away. First move, make their actions public and procedural. If they were going to act like a private government, I'd treat them like one, filed complaints, certified records, and witnesses. I called the county recorder first and ordered certified copies of every document touching the pond, my deed, old plats, tax records, even a 1980s survey that showed the springs outlet clearly inside my lot. I photographed the foreman's crew and their trucks, stamped each image with time and date, and uploaded backups to the cloud. I wrote down names, license plates, and the exact phrases Karen used. Small things matter in court, small things make a confident bully nervous. Next, I pulled together neighbors. A couple who'd once been afraid to upset the HOA signed affidavits about seeing people from the community using the pond and the board's recent heavy-handed talk. The retired lawyer down the street agreed to notarize statements and even reviewed my packet. That surprised him enough to volunteer a handwritten note about HOA overreach, useful credibility. Setback one came when I learned the HOA had filed an authorization letter from a property manager giving them permission to remove structures. It looked official until my surveyor pointed out the signature block was wrong, no county seal, and the dates didn't match county filings. That smelled like a forgery. Instead of panicking, I used it. I made copies and flagged it in a formal complaint to the county attorney, noting irregularities. Mini twist 1, the county inspector who came out mentioned, off the record, that the HOA had previously been cited for unauthorized shoreline work years ago. He promised to dig through the files. That meant the HOA's pattern might be on public record. Finally, I filed for an emergency injunction to stop any demolition while title was verified, handed the judge my binder, and cleared my calendar. I arranged for the sheriff to be notified should the crew return. The plan was simple: let the law move in daylight, with neighbors watching, and let their paper trail strangle their swagger. By the time the court date loomed, the binder felt heavier, full of facts, witnesses, and one little twist after another. All that was left was to show up and let the judge read what the HOA had tried to hide. Court day felt less like theater and more like inevitability. I walked into the small county courtroom with my binder under my arm while Karen arrived in a bright dress and the kind of smile that expects applause. The judge skimmed the packet, deeds, stamped surveys, the questionable authorization with the wrong signature, and then looked up. His question was simple: why is work being done on private property without clear title? The foreman sputtered. Karen tried a speech about community benefit, but the judge wasn't buying slogans. He signed a temporary injunction on the spot: no demolition, no work, everyone off the property until title was resolved. The clerk stamped it. That stamp, quiet and official, felt louder than any shout. We walked back to the pond together, me with the binder, Karen with that suddenly thin smile. At the edge, the crew's chainsaws sat silent, like oversized toys abandoned. The foreman handed me a clipboard, cheeks flushed. "We were told to proceed," he said. "We'll wait for written orders." The sheriff, who'd been on call, read the injunction aloud into his radio and informed the crew they'd have to vacate. One by one, the trucks pulled away, flags flapping, leaving a row of empty footprints in the mud. Then came the petty unraveling that felt sweetest. A neighbor who'd seen Karen signing that authorization the week before stepped forward with a shaky recording, her admitting she'd rush-processed the paperwork herself to get the job done. You should have seen her face when playback filled the quiet. The smugness drained out, replaced by a silence that was almost disbelief. People watched as the HOA's confidence collapsed into paperwork and apologies. Karen opened her mouth and then closed it. The dock stayed put. The pond stayed mine. And for the first time in weeks, the water looked calm, like truth had set it right. In the days that followed, everything shifted. The HOA's Grand Pond project that was supposed to be their legacy turned into a cautionary tale. The judge later ruled that not only was the pond and surrounding land mine by deed, but the HOA had acted outside its authority by trying to seize it. Karen was officially censured, stripped of her HOA board position, and quietly resigned a month later. She still lived across the street, but she avoided eye contact like it burned. The pond, once under threat, became a kind of quiet victory symbol. Neighbors who'd once been silent stopped me on walks to say they were glad I stood firm. A few even admitted they hadn't liked Karen's pushy ways but didn't think anyone could challenge her. It was funny how one stamped deed could change people's spines. I rebuilt the dock sturdier, with new planks and a fresh coat of paint. That summer, my kids fished off it every weekend, their laughter carrying across the water like proof that some things are worth defending. Every ripple felt like a reminder: home isn't just a house, it's the ground beneath it, the space you care for, the memories you make there. The HOA, stung and cautious, retreated back to enforcing trash bin rules and lawn heights, but they never again tried to touch the pond. The water stayed still, mine in name and in spirit. And Karen? The loudest woman in the neighborhood turned into the quietest. She never mentioned trespassing again. Truth has a way of doing that, of silencing those who thought their voices were stronger than facts. The whole ordeal taught me something simple: sometimes, the best revenge isn't shouting back. It's watching silence fall on the ones who thought they could shout forever. Looking back, that whole mess with the pond still makes me shake my head. All that noise, all that drama, when the answer had been sitting in my filing cabinet the whole time. A simple piece of paper, signed and stamped, carried more weight than all of Karen's shouting and the HOA's threats combined. It reminded me that sometimes, you don't have to fight fire with fire. You just have to stand calmly, hold your ground, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Karen wanted control, she wanted power, but in the end, she couldn't argue with a deed that spelled it out in black and white. And as I sit on my dock now, watching the sun set over water that's mine both in heart and on paper, I can't help but feel a little satisfaction. Justice doesn't always come loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, and that makes it even sweeter. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got plenty more HOA tales where neighbors learn the hard way, you won't want to miss them.